Zoom seminar based on marketing intercity trains. We have a great lineup of guests today. And as a preface to that, the Vermont Rail Action Network, of course, is a Vermont statewide regional membership group, as well as friends from around the region and the country. Our mission is to support, promote rail, both passenger and freight services throughout Vermont and the region. Today, we're going to be talking about marketing intercity passenger trains, and we have a great lineup. Natalie Bogart's with us she's the Director of Marketing for the very successful Downeaster. Priscilla Kalugdan, Marketing Communications Officer for the Capital Corridor in Sacramento, where it's nice and warm. And also joining us is Jim Mathews. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Passenger Rail Association. And I know there's a lot of legislators that are in their first day at the Capitol in Montpelier who perhaps are going to miss this session, but may be watching and obviously can still watch the recording. This session is being recorded, and we do encourage any questions and welcome them, but our time is limited. So would you please only ask one question per speaker, and we'll defer any other questions for later. We're on for 1 hour, and after as a formal session, and after that, as usual, Christopher Parker, our Executive Director of the Vermont Rail Action Network, will continue on ad nauseum as long as the discussion goes on about rail. Christopher will probably be the last one to sign off. So why don't we get going, and we'll start. I'd ask everybody to please mute if you aren't muted, and to stay muted until you're recognized. That would certainly keep the background noise to a dull roar. Why don't we start with, I consider one of the most successful Amtrak corridor startups over the past 2 decades, and that's the Downeaster running between Boston's North Station and all the way up to Brunswick now. Natalie, is that as far as you go? And I think you're trying to stretch it even further, aren't you?
We are still moving forward for sure.
Yeah. It's a great example of frequency, competitive pricing, and every station that is on that line has seen great economic return throughout the local communities due to the extensive Amtrak service that's provided. So, Natalie, tell us about your marketing efforts, how they pay off, and what advice you would give to others that are trying to achieve the great success that you've had there on the Downeaster.
Thank you very much. If the host wants to enable me to share screen, I did just put together a few slides to kind of help with the conversation.
Yeah, Christopher.
Good, Natalie. If it doesn't work, just tell me and I'll do it from here.
Okay, I think that we're good. Let me get into the slideshow mode. Is that working for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for having me. I'm Natalie Bogart. I'm the marketing director for the Northern New England Passenger Rail Authority. I have been in this role for 16 years as of February. So not to count my chickens or eggs before they hatch, but for 16 years, I've been promoting the Amtrak Downeaster service, and appreciate all the accolades that Brad just went through. So I thought that we'd start with a Downeaster service overview. We operate 5 round trips daily between Brunswick and Boston with a 3-hour and 25-minute travel time. Our train operates at top speed 79 miles per hour, and our corridor is 143 miles long. We serve 12 station communities in 3 states, and our value fares range from $3 to $30 one way. Pre-pandemic, our ridership was 547 plus thousand passengers per year. And we just finished our fiscal year with 117,000 plus passengers. So I think one of the things that I'd like to point out about kind of the Downeaster service in general is the area that we operate. Our biggest competition is probably the personal vehicle. Our corridor mirrors the I-95 interstate. And so our travel time isn't considered competitive. Our frequency, we do also have a number of intercity bus services that operate in the same service area. So our frequencies aren't as many as them. I think Concord Coach Lines operates about 14 round trips daily between Portland and Boston, as an example. And our price point, while $30 may seem like an affordable train ticket, our competition has lower price points. So that's one of the reasons why NEPRA has made a continual investment in marketing. It's very important for us to keep the Downeaster service top of mind. For many, many years, we've had kind of a slow and steady approach to paid media, making sure that there aren't significant periods of time that the Downeaster's brand isn't being promoted from a paid perspective. And then from a grassroots perspective, the Amtrak Downeaster marketing team, pre-pandemic, we were up to 2.5 people in our marketing department. We're back to one full-time marketing director, myself. We do carry a full service marketing agency and are supported by a graphic design contractor. Our annual marketing budget is $500,000, and about $250,000 of that is put into paid media, getting our message out to our markets. Some of my responsibilities include developing our marketing strategy and allocating the budget, managing our advertising agency, overseeing the creative that's produced and developed, figuring out and implementing specific marketing programs to drive ridership to off-peak trains, developing new programs, managing AmtrakDowneaster.com as well as NEPRA.com, managing and posting content to our social media channels, a lot of grassroots outreach, including attending trade shows, making presentations to different audiences, and really managing the use of the Downeaster brand. And then outside of that, I also participate in and would encourage any state that's considering marketing to really leverage the resources that are available through states Amtrak Intercity Passenger Rail Committee, which is C4C as the acronym. That's really been an opportunity to connect and collaborate with colleagues such as Pricilla, and to develop resources that we can share, and also really to leverage what Amtrak does on a national level as far as their advertising strategy, their research, helping us to dissect our data and ridership trends to really help us determine what the right strategy is to move forward. So some of the marketing goals that we have for the Downeaster service really kind of during the pandemic is to continue to recover our ridership and revenue. As many of you know, this is the Downeaster's 20th year. We really wanted to leverage that anniversary to raise awareness and to grow enthusiasm for our service. We want to incentivize travel with flash sales and fare promotions, again, kind of using those to build ridership during low demand periods. And it's been more important than ever to really balance all of our forward-facing advertising with safety messaging to let people know that that does remain a priority in our current climate. So the way that we do that is we have a variety of target markets, and they really vary by train and by season. As an example, our first train in the morning, train 680, arrives into Boston daily at 7:50 a.m. And pre-pandemic, we didn't really spend much effort on that train because it was full of commuters going to Boston to work. Whereas train 686, as an example, arrives in Boston daily at 4:15 p.m. And really on days of events and demand factors, we would expect lots of sports fans and concert goers. On other days, we had to kind of work harder to figure out who the target market was going to be. But we look at kind of our trains on that granular of a level and develop target markets, messaging, and go after different demographics really by train and by season. So during the pandemic, kind of two new target markets rose to the top for us, the essential traveler, as well as the millennials. And then historically, and we still continue to do this, market to leisure travelers. And we can even get more niche, like seniors, families, and tourists, sports fans, concert goers, college students, medical travelers. And we haven't really seen the commuter and business travelers come back in full force yet, but we continue to have programs available for them and continue to go after them and are kind of waiting until the climate is right. And that's really true for the commuter and business travelers, as well as our group travel market. So we took the approach, as ridership kind of was hard to predict what was going to happen, that we should have multiple messages available and ready. And over the course of kind of the pandemic, our messaging has evolved and we had a phased campaign. I am going to play for you in a little bit a sample of one of our ads. The sound probably won't translate, but I think that the visuals still will. So bear with me on that. But the messaging really started out to all essential workers. We want to say thank you. Your work and dedication keeps our communities moving. So the Amtrak Downeaster will keep moving for you. Our trains are up and running for essential workers. It evolved into, as life starts to move forward again, so do we. The Amtrak Downeaster is now running for those who need it. Visit our website for safety, service, and schedule updates. And then kind of as we finally came back to full service, 5 round trips a day, we started using connect to the people and places you've missed. And that message has carried us through right up until our 20th anniversary on December 15th. We created a wide variety of collaterals, including this TV spot, which I'll play for you, but really heavily focused on digital advertising. We did do a little bit of radio, search engine marketing, and social media advertising as well. So I will play this for you. Again, I apologize, the sound probably won't translate, but we. So that was just a quick 15-second. It was called a bookended spot that we had available in the Maine market playing throughout the course of the pandemic. And you'll see in there, we were able to kind of go out at the beginning of the pandemic using friends and family and take some still photography of passengers wearing masks. Obviously, it was not something that we had available in our stock library. So we were able to go out and get some customized images. And so most of the people that you see in that ad are either staff or family of staff that we could safely put on trains together to capture those collaterals. We also were able to leverage the partnership with another state marketing director and got some footage from the Los Angeles agency out in California as well to use in some of our marketing. Oh, now I got to get off of this. Hold on one second. Oh, geez. Sorry about that. So as I mentioned, the kind of Connect campaign lasted up until our anniversary, at which point we shifted gears and kind of did a big 20th anniversary push. The goals of that were to really honor our past achievements and milestones, to highlight our current initiatives and future enhancements, to use it as an opportunity to recover ridership and revenue, and to grow awareness and enthusiasm for this service. So I would encourage all of you at a later date to visit amtrakdowneaster.com/20 years. You can see our commemorative timeline and download a copy. You can enter our sweepstakes, which is live through the end of the day on January 7th. We are giving away 3 car-free vacation packages with a grand prize, including Downeaster Rail as well as Amtrak Rail to New York City for a stay. It includes a Broadway show. We have an overnight in Boston, and we have an overnight in Maine at the Harris Inn in Freeport, which is a lovely property if you've never been. But we're really using this as an opportunity to get firsthand passenger information, we're using these sweepstakes as an opportunity to grow our lists so that we can continue to market to people in the future. And so far it's been pretty successful. Over 6,500 people have entered our sweepstakes to date. So that will be a nice boost of additional people that we can kind of leverage and reach out to again in the future. As part of the 20th anniversary celebration, we also announced on our anniversary that we have $20 fares. So that's $10 one-way fares for the month of January and February, which again is a low ridership season for us. So we're using it as an opportunity to create and surprise and delight and get chatter kind of around this really low fare. And then on our 20th anniversary, we did have an anniversary event, which we also included a groundbreaking for a new really exciting project in Wells that was funded by a Chrissy grant. This event was attended by the governor of the state of Maine, as well as leadership at the FRA, Amtrak, Pan Am Railways, and other stakeholders, and resulted really in a really fun day. It was nice to be back in person safely with people, breaking ground on a really exciting project that's going to enable the Downeaster to operate a 6th daily round trip between Brunswick and Wells and provide for the first time an option for people from Southern Maine to commute into Portland daily for work. So that was a very exciting project to break ground on. It was exciting to just see people again. It had been quite a while, but we also really used this event as an opportunity to gain a lot of earned media, and we had really robust media coverage from the event. So overall, a smashing success. Other marketing initiatives that are kind of a constant part of what we do are communication. We're regularly in communication with customers through a variety of channels, AmtrakDowneaster.com, our social media channels, and we try to have fresh content and posts anywhere between 3 and 5 times per week. We have our Inside Track e-newsletter, which is mailed to about 25,000 and hopefully 6,500 more people added soon, contacts twice a month. And we do media relations as needed. And as I mentioned, we kind of have a constant paid media campaign. In addition, we do a lot of different types of research. And I think that of particular importance is we reached out to our passenger list during the pandemic to find out what their thoughts were on what their travel needs were going to be moving forward. And it really helped inform schedule changes that we implemented this July. Instead of having 2 peak 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. departures from Boston, we went to a 3 p.m. and a 6:40 and a 5:45 p.m. departure. And those changes seem to really fit people's new travel patterns. In addition, community outreach. Our goal really is to remain active in the communities that we serve. We're members of many chambers of commerce. We partner on special fare promotions with organizations like the American Cancer Society to offer significantly discounted fares for people that need to travel to Boston for cancer treatment. We've worked with the Toys for Tots almost since the inception of service to collect toys for their mission at the holiday time. We have a special state employee discount and really have developed a robust field trip program called the Downeaster Discovery Field Trip Program that provides educational opportunities for Maine school children. And really our goal is to be more than just a train ride. The fare box and what we bring in revenue doesn't tell the complete story. We're really here to provide public benefit. And that's what we strive hard to do every day. And that is all from me.
Wow, I'm spinning. My head is going around and around here. That's amazing. The marketing effort you do there, Natalie. I've always been impressed with the schedule and the overall marketing on board the train, but never realized being here in Vermont how extensive the background is you're working on there. And I was remiss, by the way, that your efforts were recognized as you were a nominee for the Rising Star in Railroading, the 2020 Progressive Railroading magazine. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So quick, I have a question. Let's just start off with, I mean, it's going to be marketing wise. First of all, one question: $250,000 for paid media in an annual budget. Can you give us just a quick ranking as to where that, if there is a first and second recipient of that marketing effort?
So that's a great question. One of our strategies for a long time has kind of been to do this slow drip media approach, which means that we're constantly in market. And so one of the avenues that we've used heavily is television advertising in the Maine market on the 6 p.m. news. And so our advertising agency kind of helps determine what those media buys will look like and how we can reach the most people with limited resources. But historically, we've always had a presence on television. I'd say over the course of the past 5 years, a lot has changed in marketing, and we have really moved towards a much heavier digital strategy with what they call programmatic advertising, which is kind of meeting people where they are as opposed to buying a specific channel. And so we'll target people based on their geography, their demographics, their interests, their behavior on the web, and serve them up ads that way. So television and digital take a large chunk, but we also, again, kind of going back to providing benefit to the state of Maine, spend a lot of time investing in the Train to Maine marketing campaign. That's kind of how we branded ourselves in the Boston market, and do spend a lot of time trying to bring people to Maine to explore our beautiful state and to support our local communities here. So I know that's kind of a convoluted answer to your question, but
that was very good, because it gives me an idea, because we've always struggled with, even with our own organization, how we promote rail activity here in the state. I'm going to open it up to questions, but I have one more, and I know that Lee Kahn spent some time with Natalie and the whole team over there in Portland. Where does your funding come from, Natalie, to support all the effort that you do?
Our funding mix comes 80% from the federal government and 20% from the state. And I just saw that my executive director, Patricia Quinn's face popped up on screen.
Yeah.
And want to say that as part of our small team, not only has she been a great mentor, she used to actually do the marketing back many, many years ago, but as a small team, we kind of wear multiple hats, and she still has her hand very much involved in all of the marketing that we do. So it's been a pleasure to work for her, and I don't know if she has anything that she'd like to add.
Well, welcome, Patricia. Your legacy precedes you of the excellence you've done over there and on the Downeaster. It's a testament to what can be done properly on a corridor when you have frequency and competitive times in fairs. I'm going to open up to other questions. We'll have one question per person if we could, and then we'll move on with our program. Any questions for Natalie or Patricia at this point? All right, I don't see anybody. Christopher, you see anybody in the room raising their hand? I don't see it. So if you
I
do,
actually, do
yes.
you mind if I jump in and ask a
Well,
question?
you're the executive director. You can go ahead.
So Natalie, what I'm curious about, Brad asked you where the money comes from, but it strikes me that marketing itself brings in money. And I wonder what you can tell us about the return on investment and how much, if you can quantify it, how much revenue you generate through the actions of your marketing and how that pays for the activities you do. Brad, I hope I'm not jumping ahead of you here.
No.
That's a great question. I think that over the course of time, we've gotten more sophisticated at trying to quantify the return on investment. One of the challenges that we face as a state is that Amtrak owns the booking channel. And so we don't get really robust information that can be a one-to-one draw like many marketers would. To say we spent this and we got this, but we have gotten pretty astute at managing and watching the different data points that exist, such as Google Analytics, and making sure that there's ample traffic coming in. There's a multitude of ways to kind of manage and track return on investment with the digital advertising. And so that's one of the benefits of moving in that direction. We're able to see what we spend and how many people we send to the site. It's just really closing that loop with, this is what we spent and this is what we bought. And that's something that C4C is working on constantly with Amtrak to try to get better access to kind of that return on investment. So we have different flagged points along the way that we kind of look at and work to and make changes based on how things are performing, but we don't have that silver bullet yet.
So Brad, I see hands up from Tom and Tom White and Carl Fowler. And I can't see everybody on my screen. So
Okay, let's start with Tom, your hand. Thomas White, your hand was up first. Please unmute and ask the question.
I'm curious, do you do anything unique customer experience? In the old days of the Cascades, the cafe car was stocked only with unique to the Pacific Northwest food and beverages. We were the first to experiment with Wi-Fi, checked baggage that Amtrak doesn't customarily provide. Do you do things like that?
That's a great question, and I am remiss in not having mentioned it. So the Amtrak Downeaster service in their cafe in particular is the only Amtrak cafe that is operated by a third-party vendor. So we have very much our hand in helping develop pricing, menus. We do bring in Maine-made products. It is our directive to use Maine-made products whenever possible. So our cafe is a unique asset to us. We are piloting currently at seat ordering, where you can order from your seat and then go and pick up your order in the cafe, which is an enhancement. And in addition, the Downeaster tries to take advantage of any pilot program that we can with Amtrak. We were the first to pilot pets on board. So Amtrak accepts pets 20 pounds and less on board the trains, and we piloted that with them. We were one of the first services to work on e-ticketing. And Patricia is great about raising her hand to help us leverage those opportunities and to pilot lots of different things. So I think that wherever possible, we try to be innovative and we try to implement programs on board that really do help with an enhanced passenger experience. And a new thing that we just started during the pandemic actually is that we've been able to increase our access to bikes through a partnership with Amtrak. So Amtrak converted a luggage rack in each of the coaches to accept bikes. And so now when we used to only be able to take bikes at 3 stations, we're able to roll bikes on and off at all 12 of our Downeaster stations.
That's awesome. I think we might be able to take a little credit for that here in Vermont, because I know we worked on bikes significantly, but overall, I was going to ask Patricia, can we like borrow Natalie for maybe 2 or 3 months? Oh, yeah. Carl Fowler, one of our greatest advocates in Governor's Rail Council. Carl, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Very quick question. I want to emphasize Tony Clitheroe's posted note. I know that the Downeaster's funding is different than most state-supported trains, but you made the observation that about 80% of the marketing budget comes from the federal government. That certainly is not the case here in Vermont with respect to the Vermonter. So is that because of a unique funding formula for the train, or why is it that you're able to get that kind of federal support for marketing? It's highly enviable, but what do we need to do to try to duplicate it?
I think that I classified it wrong. Patricia, do you want to get off mute and
Well,
Yeah, our funding is different. So the 80% is actually overall. So 50% of our pre-pandemic, about 50% of our budget expenses were covered through the fare box, and then the remainder was a combination. We pay through a combination of federal and state funds. And we are a little bit different in the funds that we get, that we are actually funded in part through the Federal Transit Administration. So we do get some FTA funds for fixed guideway to help us with maintenance expenses. And that kind of goes way back. So we are definitely unique, but that is our funding mix at this point.
Thank you.
Great. All right. I'm going to move on, and I want to thank Natalie and Patricia for coming on board. Hope you'll stay with us for the rest of the hour. And again, congratulations on everything you do right over there. And I can speak personally of having taken that train many times between Portland and Boston. As a matter of fact, I'm lucky to have my own airplane, and when I have a meeting in Boston, I'll fly to Portland because I have relatives there. Take the train down to Boston and back to Portland, and then fly back to Burlington. How crazy is that? Just to ride your train and avoid getting in and out of Boston. Very exciting. Thank you very much for your time and your input, and looking forward to being on the Downeaster again soon. Way out on the West Coast is Priscilla Kalugdan, and Pricilla is the Marketing Communications Officer for the Capital Corridor, which is no small feat in itself. And she's been doing that for almost 20 years. Is that correct? There you are, Priscilla.
Yep.
Welcome, and tell us what's going on out there with the Capital Corridor and how you're marketing it and successes and what you might have for advice.
Well, it's really interesting to follow Natalie on this because, the Downeaster we've always seen the Downeaster as our sister service on the East Coast, because we have a very similar makeup. Our services have that mix of commuters plus leisure travelers, and we actually share an anniversary month. So we celebrate our 30th anniversary December 11th. And so anyway, that's just, it's very interesting to hear so many of the things that Natalie's doing there, because it mirrors a lot of the things that we do on the West Coast. In California, obviously in Northern California, the car is definitely very much our main competitor. In fact, I do have some slides. I might as well go ahead and share those if that's okay. I'll look at this. Okay, can you guys see?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm going to go put this in presentation view. Okay, there we go. Okay, so just to give an overview of where we serve, you'll see on the map there, you'll have San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland in the middle of our route, and up on the eastern end, we push almost towards Lake Tahoe, but past Sacramento and up to Auburn in the Sierra foothills. And we also serve Silicon Valley down in towards the lower part of the map in Santa Clara and San Jose. We're not back yet at full service. At the pre-pandemic, we were at up to 30 trains a day on our most traveled segment between Oakland and Sacramento. And as of now, we're back up to 22 weekday trains, but still not quite at full service yet. We're hoping to get there, hopefully maybe later this year. We are one of the only services serving the entire Northern California mega region. And we do have lots of bus connections and partnerships with local transit where we offer free or very discounted connections to the local transit services. Pre-pandemic, our FY19 ridership was at a high of 1.77 million riders, which I was really looking forward to hopefully by 2023 or 2022 reaching that 2 million mark. But COVID had another thing in mind for us. So we are now for FY21, it was 354,000 riders this past year, which is a sharp decrease, and something that we are very much struggling with, not just our service, but also other local transit agencies in the area. I do feel fortunate that we have a lot of wonderful destinations to serve along our route, and we have 5 universities, including UC Berkeley, UC Davis, Cal State Sacramento, Santa Clara University, San Jose State. I mentioned Silicon Valley, which is probably one of the reasons why people have not returned back to our service yet, because everybody's at home doing this for their work. But of course, San Francisco is a top destination via bus connection or via transit for us. And we're fortunately very connected to Levi's Stadium, which is the home of the San Francisco 49ers, and Golden One Center and the SAP Center, where there are many concerts and events that happen. Let's see, I know that one of the questions you have is about, our marketing budget. And for us, we get 1.1 million. Not all of that is given towards advertising. About 550,000 is what I allocate to advertising in our market. It doesn't go very far, to be honest. I'm not able to run marketing continuously throughout the year with that budget. So we have to be very strategic in our market because it's very competitive and expensive, serving Sacramento, San Francisco, and the San Jose areas, to really be specific in when we time our ad campaigns flights, as well as for how long and how visible will they be. One thing that we do try to run continuously is paid search. So that's one of the things that we do try to do to stay in market all the time. But we do have a marketing staff. We have our advertising agency. We have our website development agency, a graphic design team, various customer experience vendors, which I can talk about a little bit too. And we use some of the money also to do promotional partnerships. Our team, and I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have dedicated staff for your marketing efforts. It started with just me, and we've now grown to, I've got 3 principal marketing analysts reporting to me who handle these various things. As you can see here, my day-to-day is managing all of them and keeping them guided on their objectives, as well as managing our budget and our advertising agency and just the overall clear goals we might have in mind for our success, as well as collaborating with people like Natalie through Pricilla and through other avenues. Media relations is really important for us. We also do a lot of our own service advisories, content creation. Having people who can write is really important for us, and and people who can do graphics or are familiar with that. We also have lots of fair offers that we run, which are discounted promotions and such. Website management takes up a lot of our time as well, and just managing that digital presence and e-commerce. And so the relationship between ourselves, our website that we develop, and that of Amtrak, which is the booking channel. I know that Natalie touched on that at the end of her talk, but I can't emphasize that enough as well. But being able to control that customer journey is something that we do not have towards the end, Mark. And it affects not only your ability to market to those customers and to measure your marketing, but also just how you engage with them as well, and how you are perceived in the market. I'm sure Natalie gets this all the time. Well, are you Amtrak or are you the Downeaster? What's the difference? Is there a difference? I get that all the time. So that's something when people are moving through their customer journey, not having that last step of the purchase channel, the purchase point, people question, what is the actual product? So I think that's something that's very important with regard to brand development. We also spend a lot of time with customer experience and loyalty. We have 2 loyalty programs. One is our overall Capital Quarter Rewards program, which we recently started, as well as one specifically for the college market. As I mentioned, pre-pandemic, a lot of our ridership was based on super commuters, is what we call them. Our route is about 170 miles. So our average rider was probably traveling, I'd say about 100 miles on our service, a little over an hour, hour and a half ride from, for example, Sacramento to San Francisco. And we had to focus on off-peak travel, weekend and leisure markets, doing a lot of the same things that Natalie is doing, which is groups, events and seniors. We had many senior promotions. And we also would focus on promotional partnerships with different destinations and events. This past several months, we've been working with our other state partners doing a market segmentation project. And that is something where we are really uncovering who are we really going to be marketing to going forward now that people have moved around. That's one of the things that's happened here in the Northern California region. A lot of people have moved from the city to places a little further away. They may not be traveling as much for business on our service or to different metropolitan areas as frequently, but we need to know, how do we reach them now? How can we capture them, and how can we introduce them to our service if they weren't familiar already? We've been doing onboard surveys consistently every year on Capital Quarter, so we have all of those to look back at. We skipped 2020 because no one was there. People were not writing, but we did do one in 2021, and we look forward to continuing these a little bit more frequently so that we could have a better grasp of who is currently writing and understanding what their reasons are and what their needs might be and how that differs now from the past. So right now we're really revamping our strategy, and we're trying some new things. We have not done, right now we're doing a 30% discount, and it's a longer term one that we started back in September, and we're running it through March, really to just gain people's attention and catch their eye, get them to try the train and to consider it again. And a lot of it is a friends and family focus from here on forward. I think our emphasis on leisure has really ramped up quite a bit. Events have not returned in full force here in the Northern California region, but they're starting to come back. One of the most solid events that we've had is the 49er games, and those have been, people are just very eager to get back to they're seeing their teams and rooting for their teams. So that's been very strong ridership for us this fall. That's been a bright spot. Our marketing message, as I mentioned, we really are trying to encourage people to explore and be with their family and friends. And we took a get out there and rediscover California type of a theme with our most recent messaging last summer, moving into our 30th anniversary in the fall. And of course, health and safety has been really, really key in our area to emphasize the cleanliness that we have on board our trains, as well as making sure people know that masks are required and such. I mentioned a little bit earlier about our marketing mix. We do Google paid search. We do spend some time on radio, and that would be mostly streaming, and as well as over-the-top TV, which is the programmatic stuff that Natalie had mentioned. Digital ads and retargeting. We also do digital out-of-home billboards, takes up a good chunk of our budget because a lot of people are on the freeways for us, since the car is our competitor. Working those billboards and the timing of those billboards together with the other pieces helps support the ad campaign overall. As well as we do paid social media. A small portion of our dollars are spent on boosting posts on Facebook and Instagram, as well as doing sort of a larger campaign there. And we do spend quite a bit of time developing content, social media posts, our press releases, emails. During the pandemic, we've decided to shift a lot towards video because that's very, very important right now in marketing, and doing some live video events as well. I mentioned our promotional partnerships, and normally we would have partnerships, a paid partnership with the Oakland A's, which is our local baseball team. We did not have that this past year and the past year before that. We're looking forward to doing more of those things again. We do get a lot of value through those, and I think that there are other states who do similar things. Local partnerships with destinations. In the past, we used to do partnerships with San Francisco Broadway shows and Cirque du Soleil, and that really gets people in the mindset of, oh, I can take the theater, and it gets at those non-sports team, non-sports followers. So we really want to make sure that we have types of promotional partnerships that can carry throughout the year at different times of the year, and as when football season is off. I mentioned our live video events, Corridor Conversations. We've done a series of webinars. Part of this was engagement. I think we used to do lots of rider appreciation events quarterly on board our trains in person, and it was something that we were missing during the pandemic. So we shifted to doing webinars and found that there's a really core group of riders who are interested in hearing about the outlook for our service, what's happening. You know, they have questions, they have just Q&A. And while we can't do it with the normal cookies and, you know, discounted happy hour drinks, we are able to at least engage with our customers that way. And it gives us content to put on our YouTube channel and to promote during this time. We've really focused a lot on customer experience and trying to let people know what it's like to ride during the pandemic and what they'll need to have. And we've spent a lot of time this past year really just developing honing in on our service areas in terms of helping with, you know, the customer comments and making sure that we are able to track those. We have different email lists that we've been curating a little bit more and focusing on those efforts. I think for us, the key tips that I would want to impart to people would be to really develop and know what your brand is and who you're serving, what you want to offer them. Hiring dedicated staff with marketing experience and setting, you know, reasonable goals, aiming for, you know, obviously to aim for growth, but growing those goals. You sort of start simply and then go forward from there. Owning and building your own data and customer lists is really important. I think that one of the things that I feel I've done a good job with over the years is just making sure that we've collected as many emails as we could for years and years and years. And since we don't own that customer booking point, it's been very helpful during times when we want to ask questions of our riders and get the word out about certain things. It's been very, very helpful. I would also seek out experts in each area, you know, keep your budget flexible enough to have vendors that you can rely on who are good at certain things, you might want somebody who's really good at TikTok videos. You might want somebody who's really good at writing content or an influencer. And just being open to trying new approaches. I think that that's something for Capital Corridor. We've been, you know, really successful at taking things and just trying them. And if it works, you know, we stick with it. I think that concludes there we go. So I just want to thank everybody here for having me. And I look forward to hearing about what happens in Vermont. And I'd be happy to take any questions. I've got our Facebook here, where you can follow us at Capital Corridor on Instagram, on Twitter. And there's our website as well.
Great. And thank you, Priscilla, for that great overview of everything you've been doing over the past couple of decades to make the Capital Corridor a success. Christopher, if you would remove that slide or take back control, and then I can see who's got their hands up in the room and would like to ask any questions of Priscilla. Christopher, you with us? Are you having lunch? There you go. Okay. All right. And
Sorry about that.
yeah, I know, Bill McDonald, you had a hand up from before, so we'll start with you for one quick question, please, as we've got to get on with the rest of the presenters. Thank you.
Yeah, Priscilla and Natalie, also, I'd like to just quickly say that you have my support. Doing what you're doing during this pandemic has got to be exceptionally difficult. And I wish I could do more than just offer you verbal support. It's just got to be so hard. I really feel sorry. What I wanted to ask you, Priscilla, is which station in Oakland is busier, Jack London Square or Emeryville?
Oh, that's, I would say Emeryville is probably slightly more busy because that's where we have our bus connection for San Francisco.
Yeah.
Oakland is a reasonably busy station though, but Emeryville is also home to its own companies. They have lots of companies that have offices there, including Pixar. So
Is the Richmond transfer to BART fairly popular?
yes, it is very popular. Although, you know, BART has struggled with ridership as well. I think that people are concerned about, you know, safety and such. And Richmond is, that station is a little bit, you know, all of our stations, we're an unreserved service, plus also that station is unstaffed. So I think that people feel a little bit hesitant when ridership is very low to ride transit in general, at least in our area.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, let's, we're bringing up the caboose here, so to speak, with Jim Mathews, who's no stranger to any of us. He's the former chair of Amtrak's Customer Advisory Committee, and he's currently the CEO of the Rail Passenger Association, and of course, is very much representing grassroots efforts throughout the country and advocates such as the Vermont Rail Action Network, your host today. So Jim, thanks for being with us. What do you think of all this?
Wow, thank you. Thanks, Brad, for that introduction. And Chris, thank you for having me. I just want to, I do not have some slides. I'm going to try and keep things going here quickly. But for the benefit of some of the folks here on the session that may not know who we are 54 years old. We're the Rail Passengers Association. We're the oldest and largest national organization serving as a voice for more than 40 million rail passengers in the US. And our mission is to organize our members and our supporters to improve and expand conventional intercity and regional passenger train services, support higher speed rail initiatives, increase connectivity among all forms of transportation. First mile, last mile is very important to us, and of course, ensure safety for our country's trains and passengers. It should go without saying, but I'll foot stomp this. All of this is not done in a vacuum. This is done because it makes communities safer, makes them more accessible, makes them more productive, and improves the lives of everyone who lives and works and plays in towns all across America. And it's certainly why we do what we do. We do this with a small professional team working to develop legislative proposals, responding to queries from federal, state, local, tribal, elected, and appointed officials. And then we use that work to create fact sheets, handouts, reports, and even multimedia, which allow grassroots citizen lobbyists to make the case for rail and public transportation in their own communities. And these engaged members can help create a public conversation that over time can make change happen. Congress' recent action to pass at least $66 billion for rail over the next 5 years is proof enough that we really can influence the conversation with calm, reasoned, professional, and fact-based advocacy with people whose decisions really can make a difference. I hope that one of the things that has come out of this whole conversation, Christopher's managed here to pluck out some true leaders in innovative promotion of rail service. In press interviews, I often highlight Capital Corridor and the Downeaster as great examples of how to succeed. I hope that's okay to talk behind your back like that, but I recently sent a reporter from Governing Magazine up to visit with Downeaster as a real example of, this is how it's done. This is how you make this work. So you have the right folks to share advice here today. One message I really hope does kind of emerge from this discussion is the importance of professional marketing and messaging. I think within the grassroots rail community, there's almost a kind of romantic attachment to a sort of bootstrapping, homemade approach to promoting rail. And certainly there's a place for that. I don't mean to diminish that. But if you're going to break through and win mind share in today's media market, you've got to have sophistication, understanding, and really the biggest success stories seem to come from selective, targeted efforts by people who do messaging for a living. At the association, we try to use our small team to amplify our members' concerns and desires for new service and improvements and so forth. But, we too selectively work with professional partners in developing messaging, in crafting national survey instruments, creating nationwide campaigns. So I really hope that those of you on the session today who are in a position to support or approve these kinds of initiatives, I really hope that you recognize the value that professional expertise in marketing and messaging will bring to either launching new service or expanding your current service. Don't skimp on these steps. If you're sitting there looking at your own checking account, $1.1 million might look like a lot of money, but as Priscilla points out, does not go far at all. And it's fun to punch above your weight, but at some point, if we really want to advance rail transportation in this country, all the agencies that are working on new service, particularly as there's this new money out there to try to get service going, you can't just do word of mouth. You can't just sort of romantically hope that rail fans will come to your rescue. You need to do this right and do it in a professional way. And certainly, I think the Downeaster and Capital Corridor really show that this works. This is the way to do it. So in the interest of time, that's where I'm going to stop, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Jim, for that great overview and for taking time to be with us today. Tom Martinelli, sorry, Tom, you had a question, I believe.
I have a question for Priscilla. The 1.1 million, is that part of the state-supported service? Is that part of what's allocated from what you pay Amtrak that goes towards marketing, or is that coming from the government of California?
That's the state funded. That's what we get from the state.
Okay. So then you just choose to do it all yourself as opposed to hand it over to Amtrak, correct?
Correct.
And then how do you work with Amtrak beyond the 1.1 million in terms of like their marketing efforts?
We work with them on some joint messaging. Let's see, we do work with them a lot on the e-commerce portions and the website, and but we don't really participate in any joint advertising that they may do. In fact, I'm usually trying to time my campaigns to not be at the same time as theirs, so that we're not cluttering the market with our messages together.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So we're right at the top of the hour, which is where we need to be on time. And as a former conductor myself, I like to be on time. So I want to thank everybody for being here. A shout out to Kurt Cormick. Kurt, nice to have you aboard. Vermont House Transportation Chair, and always a huge advocate for anything rail in the state of Vermont. We appreciate your support, and we're certainly looking at our next venture, which is, of course, once we get the Western Corridor down to Burlington, figuring out how to get that over to Essex Junction and making everybody happy in the village of Essex and surrounding area. But thanks very much for being here. thanks again to Natalie and Patricia out in Portland, Maine. Great presentation, and you're the epitome of all of us. You guys, you are what we want to be someday when we grow up. And also thanks Priscilla for joining us from the West Coast. Enjoy your warm temperatures, and we'll keep the cold air here in the East. And of course, Jim, it's always great, Jim Mathews, to have you on board with us. And I thank you very much for all of you for joining us here on the Vermont Real Action Network Zoom, which we had some 55 participants today. So that's excellent. And we'll probably I know we'll be doing some more of these because it's great to reach out to our advocates and members and to get the word out of what's going on, what we're doing as an organization throughout the state. We are a nonprofit organization, so the pitch is hit our donate button on our website, VermontRail.org, and give what you can, because good people like Christopher Parker don't come for free. And he's, as a treasurer, he's always saying, where's my check? So you guys can help out with that as well. So, and again, recognizing Lee Kahn, our chairman of the board. Thank you, Lee. Deb Sachs is with us today. And do we have any other board? Any other board members I'm missing? I don't think we have any more on board today, but anyway, thanks again for being here. Christopher is going to continue the dialogue until the sun goes down and comes up if you want. So thank you all for being here. Happy New Year.
Thanks to everyone. All right, I'm just going to take a moment to focus my attention on removing the spotlights here. So the floor is open for anyone who wants to say. There is no particular expectations at this point. We have time to have a discussion about what we just heard and how it might apply to Vermont. I see Bill's got his hand up, so I guess he gets the first word here. What's cooking, Bill? You're on mute. Bill is on mute.
Hello, Chris,
we
can you
go.
hear me?
That's
Can
better.
you hear me?
Yes.
Have you heard anything about the line between Rouse's Point and Montreal? Is that still slated for a 10-mile-an-hour slow order?
I have not heard anything since the conversation we had. We are looking at focusing our next big Zoom meeting on Montreal. So I think we'll be gathering information in advance of that.
Would
I'll leave it at
Charlie,
that because-
Charlie should know something about that, shouldn't he?
Maybe Charlie can pipe in. I see hands up from Lee and from Kurt. Lee, why don't you go?
I have a question that I wanted to get in, but I didn't quite get it in time. In terms of, does anybody know of any data related to riding the train and climate change? Has anybody done any, basic data on how the Downeaster has an impact on that, and what kind of formulas did they use to do that, or is anybody aware of that? And I would also ask another question related to that, which is, have we studied how this is an impact on equity issues? And does anybody have any data on that? I'm seeing that a lot of funding that will be coming out for various transportation issues are grounded in both equity and climate change, which I think is fabulous. But those were not part of their marketing points when we went through all of that. So just curious.
Natalie and Priscilla are not with us anymore. Neither are the rail passengers folks, but I see that Tom White is, and has helpfully unmuted himself because he has an organization that he probably wants to tell us about at this moment.
Yeah. we have an organization that's a year old called Climate Rail Alliance. The simple physics are that rail transportation uses 1/3 of the energy and produces 1/3 of the emissions of highway transportation. Highway transportation generates 82% of all transportation emissions in the US. Airplanes generate 9%, rail produces 2%. We are trying to create bigger grassroots, bigger lawn for emphasis on mode shift. We have some rich folks out here in Washington that are promoting a bullet train so that they can get from Vancouver, BC to Seattle in an hour or 45 minutes or 37 seconds or whatever today's number is. Things like that. They compete with airplanes. Airplanes are only, like I said, 9%. So the biggest emphasis needs to be on mode shift to remove traffic from highways. Right now, the American railroad industry, let's say, has lost a lot of their institutional knowledge. But if you configure a railroad for frequent, fast, and reliable with a capital R passenger service, it also can handle more freight. And of course, that's part of the mode shift. Right now, the railroad industry, due to the nature of American corporations, Wall Street and such, if it isn't going 750 miles and if it doesn't weigh 20,000 tons all in one shipment, they don't want it. I'm working with some people on short haul intermodal, like a ferry for trucks to.
We
What's
should
that?
come back to this, Tom. We should come back to this, but I'm aware that today is a particularly busy day for Kurt McCormick, first day of the legislature, and he has his hand up.
Go ahead.
I want to, since I don't know what he's got to rush off to, I want to make sure he gets his chance to have his question.
Absolutely.
And like I say, this is important, and I know it's important to Kurt too. So to be continued.
Well, first of all, thank you, Christopher. I have to confess that my committee is not meeting today. So that's why I don't have a tie on. So,
Okay.
two apologies. But I have a couple of questions, but did you want to stay on the emissions before you take other questions?
You got the floor.
Okay. All right. I have two questions, and stop me if they've been answered before, because I tuned in late. On the Downeaster, I am wondering, can we change our relationship with Amtrak to be more like the state of Maine's relationship with Amtrak? And I understand the physical reasons for that the Downeaster just runs from North Station in Boston up into Maine and back, and that's all it does, and it's kind of an extension of the Amtrak system, whereas we are in the system. But I see, and I'm sure everybody agrees, that there's advantages to having a relationship more like the state of Maine does, like the food service, which is better because they do it themselves up there. And another thing they do is they have this wonderful cab car called the Cabbage Car. If people don't know about that, it's fantastic. It's old. It's an old engine with the engine taken out, and it's a baggage car and a cab car. So it actually looks like an engine. So it's much better looking and safer for the operator when they're in the front than the other types of cab cars, which are not safe. And if you didn't know, unless this has changed, the plan for the Ethan Allen Express from Rutland, when it leaves Rutland coming up here to Burlington, they're planning on putting a second engine on it because they don't want to turn it around in Rutland, even though I think I remember being told that only takes 15 minutes, but maybe it takes more. so the train, as you know, when it comes into Rutland from Whitehall, New York, will be actually facing south when it gets to the Rutland station. So you need to either have a cab car or turn it around or put another whole engine on it. And they're talking about another whole engine. So talking about the emissions, that particular run with 2 engines running will not be terribly energy efficient for a train that's only going to have 4 or 5 cars on it. And that Cabbage Car they have it for the Maine service, I just think it's fantastic. I've talked to an operator once in North Station about it. They love it, works great. And it's nothing but a cab car. The engine can stay on the same end of the train. So what would it take, and is it possible for us to have a relationship with Amtrak more like the state of Maine does?
I have a thought about that, but I see Tony on the call, and I want to see if she has 2 cents before Lee or I chime in. Tony. Well, the short answer is yes, we can have a structure like Maine. Lee, I see you shaking your head. Do you want to jump in with something more?
Yeah, I mean, we have to have a new relationship with Amtrak. You know, this is very critical to how we move forward because we want basic changes to this service to better serve Vermont. We've just gotten wonderful information here about how we do marketing, how we could give discounts to White River Junction, to the hospital for veterans, how we can give discounts to students to take it, how we could do discovery trips that they talked about for school children on the train. All these things that are not just made up, but actually are working out there are the kinds of things that we want to be talking about. So a new relationship with Amtrak is critical.
So this gets to the question of governance, right? You notice that both California and Maine have set up many little authorities. Doesn't mean that the authority is the way to go, but what they've done is empowered staff to give their full-time attention. So I'm talking about giving Tony more support here, is what I'm talking about. And marketing, perhaps, is one of those things that should, you would think, pay for itself in terms of revenue. I see hands up from Deb and Carl, who I know have thoughts on this as well as other things. Deb, I think your hand is up first, so I'm gonna
defer and let Carl go because I think he may be responding to the dialogue that Kurt asked. So go ahead, Carl, and then I'll.
Or actually, Deb Fox.
I'm sorry.
2 Debs here. Deb
Yeah,
Fox.
thank you, Chris. One of the things that frustrates me listening to these 2 conversations is the relationship that these 2 organizations in California and the Downeaster have, not only with the state, but with Amtrak. And the one thing I don't understand, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you folks on the Rail Council have been privy to the information, but no one has ever seen, that I know of, a contract for the Vermont Ethan Allen, what's expected of the state of Vermont, where our marketing dollars are going, all of that. Does anyone have access to that or has seen the contract?
Yeah,
Blank
we've been
space
asking
here.
that for a long time. A long
Carl, you're
time.
speaking, but
Yeah.
you're on mute.
Did that work?
Yeah.
Oh, you're on mute again. Please unmute yourself.
Did that work?
There we go.
All right.
Yeah.
Amtrak treats its state contracts as one of its deepest and darkest secrets, and they are very rarely leaked. That is a problem because we don't really know what the expectations are. I can tell you that historically, the Downeaster was established with special dedicated funding that was indeed partially what they then called congestion mitigation money. Not entirely dissimilar to what we had for the Champlain Flyer up here at one time. But its funding has never been exactly the same as any other state-supported train. There's always been a difference in it, and it derives back to the power of the Maine delegation, really, when the contracts were originally set up, and the fact that the Amtrak executive people were very interested in that service. But the key to it, to me, that we can take out of it, whether we get a difference in contract or not, is that independent authority. The independent authority is only dedicated to running the train. So its survival is dependent upon doing a good job for the passenger train. That is a distinct difference. This is not a shot at Tony or a shot at VTrans, but passenger rail is only one small side of the VTrans equation. And until Tony was given at least a half-time responsibility for the passenger services, we've never had previously a dedicated position in VTrans specific to the passenger operation. And whether or not that would help with marketing or with operations or whatever, I simply cannot accept that it wouldn't give us at least somewhat more standing to have a full-time position that was solely devoted to the two passenger trains. My other comment is, I'd been putting this up in the chat side. If I got a message out of what we heard today, it was that marketing drives ridership, as does frequency. Both the Downeaster and the capital trains run many multiple frequencies per day, and as a result can meet multiple marketing needs. We simply can't do that with only one train. No matter how you design it, it never quite works out. Dan Delabere and I had a bit of a come to at the Rail Council 10 days ago when Dan misinterpreted my comment on the new pending schedule for the Ethan Allen as being a bad schedule. The point I was trying to make is no matter how you structure a single daily frequency, you're going to meet some people's needs and not others. And the Ethan Allen is being driven in part, at least, by the requirements of federal law of crew time off. But you can add a second train, and it's been shown over and over again in the Amtrak history. A second train does not double your expense. It incrementally increases expenditures only slightly, and it increases ridership tremendously. Downeaster has a subsidy line of about 11 million a year. They get 5 round trips a year out of it. And before the pandemic struck, at least, they were pushing 600,000 riders. We put out about 8 million a year for 2 trains, 1 per day on each route. We were up 100,000 riders in the Vermonter before the pandemic, but there's a simple comparison there. Maine, for about 40% more than our subsidies, getting 5 round trips and 5 times our ridership. That to me is the big message about marketing. Frequency drives ridership, and marketing is also a function of frequency. And if we want a marketing budget, we need more trains to promote. And there are some ways we could do this very quickly. Extending a Valley Flyer train currently terminating in Greenfield up to White River Junction would cost relatively very little and would give Southern Vermont a morning departure to New York. Allow Southern Vermonters to go down to the New York City area for at least a half a day of business. Using the long stored all earth RDC cars up here in Northern Vermont could provide regional services in Northern Vermont. Taking advantage of establishing a crew base in Burlington instead of just Albany might allow us to make 2 round trips a day on the West Side Corridor and get out of the trap of the hours and service law, the layoff times. But those are the sort of things we ought to be looking at. But in the most short term, we need a dedicated position at VTrans, dedicated to passenger rail. We need a marketing budget that is sufficient to do sustained, repeat, targeted marketing again and again and again. As the lady from the Downeaster said, and as the California lady also said, we just keep doing it, doing it, doing it. I get those emails from them. They're wonderful. Twice every month, timetables, a link to a timetable, links to fares, links to how to book it. We're not doing that because we don't have anybody dedicated to making it possible to do that. And the positions we do have working on rail are tied up with engineering design, other projects and simply don't have the time to do that kind of work for us, with which I will subside.
Yep.
Oh, one last thing to Kurt McCormick. I believe there is attention right now being paid to the possibility of using a converted cab car on the Ethan Allen Express. In fact, I've actually seen pictures of a depowered electric motor from the Northeast Corridor, which might be used to still have its cab equipment in it, its control lines. I saw a photo of such an engine in test mode down in the corridor within the last month. I don't know if we'll get such a thing, but I think it is a distinct possibility.
Kurt, I've heard that too. It's not the latest word, but maybe Tony knows more.
Yeah. I'm not
Tom,
giving anything away. I've just seen the picture of it, but there was no, and the caption of the picture by the rail fan who posted it, and as all such things that could have been fantasizing, was that this was an example of what Amtrak was considering to use north of Albany on the Ethan Allen Express in the district where directional reverse will be necessary at Rutland.
So I see Tom's hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to offer Washington State as a good example and a bad example. We basically set the stage for the innovations that Virginia and Maine are doing. We had a just about world-renowned service on the Amtrak Cascades. And the secret to that was that the Department of Transportation had a separate rail office that was autonomous from the highway department. We had engineering, operations, marketing, administration, all dedicated to the rail program, as well as an on-call multidiscipline engineering contract that basically was the hand-picked best that they could find in every railroad-related discipline. Washington State started undergoing some, let's say, political change in the early 2000s. The dedicated rail office went away. The dedicated marketing efforts went away. The enthusiasm went away. And we now have a lackluster service that is just barely considered a service. So part of what my organization is doing is fighting to get back what we started that Maine and Virginia have now. So a dedicated, not even a dedicated position, a dedicated rail office. And that in Washington dealt with short line freight railroads as well as passenger service. Makes a vast difference.
And no doubt provides job security for the people involved.
Up until the political change, yeah.
Yes. And afterwards, if the organizational structure was different. I saw Hank's hand, and after that, Jack.
Yeah, I think the point that I would like to make is that all the talk about marketing today is really very stimulating. And the question for us at VRAN, I would think, as an organization, is how do we bring pressure, maybe not the right word, to VTran, which has done a fantastic job with engineering and actually running the trains operationally, engineering, fantastic. But other than a spectacular kickoff for the restarted trains on July 19th, there seems to be absolutely no marketing since that date. You get the feeling that the state is just waiting for the train to go to Montreal or at least arrive in Burlington, and then there's going to be some kind of marketing campaign. Meanwhile, there's a lot of missed opportunities. So I guess my question would be, and for us to think of as an organization, is do we work politically? Do we work direct with VTrans? How do we get people to see the light here, as we've been shown today, to make those changes in their approach to rail here in the state? Thanks.
I'm wondering if Kurt has a thought about that.
I do, and I was about to raise my hand. I think, and this is a real great opportunity with all these folks, especially some of your board members on this call. It would be really helpful if people looked over the membership of the House and the Senate Committees on Transportation. There's 11 members in the House and 5 or 6, and I guess 5 in the Senate, and see which ones might represent you, especially in the Senate, because they're county-wide, and be in touch with them, lobby them on rail issues. I think that would be really helpful. I don't know how many members hear from their constituents about rail. So I think that would really be helpful, Richard. And not only the members of the committee, if look at that first. If you find a member is also your representative, then that's the best person to call. But your representative should be talked to, even if they're not on the committee, because then they talk to us, and that's how it works. If we're ever back in the State House like we used to be, as you know, most of the work truly does take place in the hallways and in the cafeteria and in conversations, and members will pressure us. How come you're not taking up this bill or that bill or the particular issue? We basically work on 2 very large bills, and rail is inside of one of them, the so-called T-bill, the Transportation Program Bill. But it doesn't really matter. You don't need bill numbers or anything else. Just get them interested in rail. Tell them whatever you want to tell them, why you think it's important. But I think that would really, really be helpful.
And just to help in this process, I've dropped into the chat a link to, if you don't know who your legislators are, you should. And the link is to a web page that will let you know.
If I could add, when you lobby in the Vermont legislature, it's very, very different. It's not like writing to our members of our congressional delegation. You will hear right back from the member. You'll get them on the phone, easy enough. Don't hesitate to call on weekends. Most of us have our cell phones in the biographical sketches there in that book, I guess, that Christopher is sending out. It's a much more rewarding experience. Believe me, most of you have probably done it, of course, but for those that haven't, it's really different. I'm in a 2-member district. That means there's 2 representatives that represent my district, and we only represent about 8,100 people. So a single-member district, they represent about 4,000. It's not that many people, and most people are not in touch. So it's very, very easy. And members are anxious to talk to you.
And Chuck, I saw you, Chuck Bohar, I saw you stick your hand up there for a moment. Did you have something to say on this subject?
Chris, one of the members of the Transportation Committee is Rebecca White.
Yeah.
From Hartford. And she would like to learn more. I'd be happy to teach her more, or teach. That's such a condescending term, and I don't mean it that way. But most civilians aren't even aware that railroads exist, except they sort of like one somewhere. And I think if we could prepare as a group what these people need to know to understand what's going on, they would respond to us. And I would really urge us to pick up on the idea that when a member of the legislature talks to you, they do hear that stuff, and they become aware that railroads are important. And they're all fixated on I exaggerate, there's too much fixation on Montpelier and Burlington, which I personally think is a terrible mistake. I think there are other options that we need to think about other than Montpelier and Burlington. Anyway, I'll help with that if it's needed.
Terrific. And Chuck is a former representative for the Transportation Committee from White River Junction. So he's raising the flag for his own region, which is appropriate. I'm going to drop a challenge here for everyone. Before you move on to the next thing, while we're on this call, go to that link, find your representative and send them an email or make a plan to call them later. And if we just all did that collectively right here, we're a force. I see that Jack has been patient. We've moved on to a different conversation while his hand is up. So Jack, I'm going to give you the floor.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hello
Okay.
there.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk. I'm not from the state of Vermont, state of Maine. I'm formerly the president of the Maine Rail Group. It's a nonprofit organization to support rail in Maine as VRAN does in Vermont and elsewhere. And I'm talking about a marketing, really it's a marketing opportunity. It's stimulated by the earlier discussion on this call. And that is for the Mountain Division line, which runs from Portland, Maine to essentially St. Johnsbury and connects with the Vermont rail system down to White River Junction. The corridor and most of the corridor still exists in rail form, connects two Amtrak stations. The states of Vermont and Maine have, in my opinion, done a remarkable job of getting by the parochialism that underlines a lot of the things that individual states do to create the Downeaster and to create the Vermonter, which runs through Maine, Vermont, Maine and or Vermont, and New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and in the case of the Vermonter, New York State. And they're successful in both cases, and they've run for quite some time, and they have a good future ahead of them. The Mountain Division is in a state of fracturization right now. There is a committee appointed by the State Department of Transportation in Maine to look into the possibilities for creating a trail on part of the Mountain Division. The trail people are after it. It's wonderful if it can be done in parallel with safe and efficient rail, but the trail folks would rather have the whole thing and tear up the rail and put in a trail. If that's done, the Mountain Division as a continuous line between the states is dead, in my opinion. Promises to the contrary and experience with similar things elsewhere says that it is dead because interest will wane and it will be a trail for the foreseeable future. I think there's a tremendous opportunity in a passenger service, be it public or private, that's extended seasonal, that connects the points of White River Junction, Amtrak served, with Portland, Maine, Amtrak served, through a region, call it Crown of New England, if you will, that's attractive nationally, as other places are on the national Amtrak system. It's an opportunity to bring more tourism into that area of the three states. And I think it should get a very serious look before Maine or any of the other states makes a decision to just shut down that line and eliminate it from the map, from the rail map, except for the piece in the middle in the Conway Scenic, which is in operation. And my family and I had a very good trip on it not too many months ago. But I wanted to bring that up here today in relation to marketing, because I think the big opportunity is for marketing for the Downeaster, for the Vermonter, and for the national rail system to bring people into Maine without their cars, as was pushed by the state of Maine 20 years ago. And that's what I wanted to say. And I hope there is a gleam of interest in Vermont that can be expressed back to the state of Maine in its deliberations, whether to convert part of the mountain division to trail, because if it does, that opportunity, I believe, will be lost for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Christopher, may I chime in?
Yes, Deb.
I think, Jack, you've raised a really good point, and, talk about equity, which was mentioned earlier, the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, and bringing that, bringing something like that as a project forward would be really tremendous. My comment was related to, and I'd be supportive of something like that, in terms of a multi-state initiative to remember that rail really is one of the most carbon friendly forms of transportation. When it strings our communities together, it is reaching into addressing equity, as Lee mentioned earlier. And it's got to be something that stays in focus for us. I'm tremendously proud Vermont invests so much and has so much talent for rail in Vermont and our assets. But I just want to reinforce how carbon friendly it is over the car, which both our speakers, or all three speakers, mentioned as the biggest competitor to rail is the car. And I know our Representative Kurt McCormick is all over that point about the car. And if there's anything we can do as an organization, letter writing, contacting our legislators about our climate action plan that we've just is now out in front of us. Rail is one of our biggest solutions that we need to make and continue to make investments in for our future and our children's future.
And before we move on from this, I know we cut Tom White off. Tom, you're looking a little distracted, but I wonder if you had anything else to say in response to what Deb just said.
Oh, it's just a matter of we need to do several things. Passenger will improve freight, but the freight railroads have to learn how to run a railroad again. That involves education. I've written a book on the subject that I go into several of the subjects, including how we got to where we are and where we need to go. The matter of the branch lines going to a trail, yes, if it goes to a trail, it's never ever coming back again. And the bicycle people are kind of bizarre here in Washington. We had a line that the bicycle people said, well, there's only one train a day, and we want that for a bicycle path to connect two other bicycle paths that used to be a railroad. So they did it. And the one train a day was bringing a couple of carloads of lumber to a big lumber yard every day. It now all goes by truck. So the bicycle people scored. They got rid of the railroad and they increased the number of trucks in the neighborhood.
Jack, your hand's been up for a little bit.
Yeah, it was mentioned that the question was asked, well, what can be done? I think the biggest immediate thing from the state of Maine standpoint would be for the state of Vermont in some capacity, and I'm not presuming what that capacity should be, express to the Maine Department of Transportation that there isn't an interest in looking into the subject from the state of Vermont's point of view. I feel the same thing for the state of New Hampshire, and I'll make other contacts there. But if there is an interest, now is the time to express that interest, not to say do it. It's far too early to say do it. But a joint study by the three states that gets seriously into the economic potential as well as the cost potential, the economics of it are on a national as well as a regional basis I think right now, today is the time to make that interest known. Thank you.
Bill. Bill.
Chris, one thing I haven't heard anyone say yet with respect to either freight or passenger is number one, you're not going to have a rail line either unless it carries about 100 cars per year per mile of line. That's about where that's about where the economic viability line is. So you have to have demand. You're not going to have a rail line for half a dozen cars a day, probably, unless it's very short. With respect to passenger, the only real place where passenger rail thrives is where you do not need the flexibility of a car. And that, of course, implies travel to urban areas, like to Boston or to New York or to Philadelphia, Washington, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, places like that. People who live in the suburbs or in the city are going out to the country. I mean, the market for rail is pretty limited. I mean, I know when Ethan Allen first started running, they were thinking about this as being a ski train. Well, when I meet my stepdaughter over in Rutland here, when she came up for Christmas vacation, there wasn't a single person on the train that had skis. It's not a ski train. If you're going skiing, you need a car. So what we really should focus on is where the inherent advantages of the steel wheel and the steel rail manifest themselves. And that is with respect to passenger to urban destinations, not rural ones. And with respect to freight, there's got to be a certain relatively high density of traffic to support it. This pie in the sky stuff is just really a waste of time. So I'll turn this over to somebody else for some more comments.
Hank, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that by saying that if there's one of the main functions of passenger rail from a rural area is to facilitate travel to urban areas, one of the things we should be looking at across the state is to make sure that every single Amtrak station comes complete with long-term parking. And it's been kind of hit or miss, and it's also where it does exist has not been properly publicized, in my opinion. And I think that's something we really have to be consistent with VTrans about. The other observation I would make is that going in the other direction, the state of California, Pricilla, they've done a fantastic job with a throughway bus system that goes all over the state of California and ties into core routes that will take you through the most populous areas of the state. So it is possible to do it both coming and going. I think we need both. And that's my point.
Thanks, Hank. Jack.
Yeah, with respect to freight versus passenger, the concept of the Crown of New England is not to move freight on a through basis, because it's served, the function is served to the south by soon to be CSX, and to the north by the St. Lawrence and Atlantic Railroad. The issue is passenger, as the Conwick Scenic Railroad does on part of the Mountain Division already, and has done for a good many years through Crawford Notch, but not in the wintertime, in an extended seasonal operation, connecting the Amtrak points of Portland and White River Junction, so that it can be those areas can be advertised nationally for the economic benefits that additional tourism would bring in. As far as local transportation, yes, that is an issue. And it would have to be worked out as part of the study and part of the connection between points along the line for people to stop over and visit the Mount Washington Hotel or whatever hotels, whatever scenic attractions there are in Vermont, as well as in Maine. and brought back to a point where a car could be dropped off, or a local bus could be dropped off. It is an issue, but the concept is principally for passenger. There may be some freight served locally from the St. Johnsbury end on the west and from the Portland end on the east, but it's primarily an extended passenger operation that's served nationally by Amtrak and the Downeaster and the Vermont. Thank you.
So I'm looking at the time. We've been at this 45 minutes. I have a sense that we may be winding down, and I would like to throw out the question if we have other topics and different people who would like to ask a question or have something to say before we draw things to a close. And I'm hearing not much, which makes me think that we have had a good run here. Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in listening to the conversation, you know, I'm a member of the Empire State Passengers Association. A lot of your challenges are similar to what we're doing in New York in terms of trying to get the DOT empowered and, you know, try to build up. I mean, they have very little staff. And so, you know, there are parallel efforts going on in New York, and perhaps, you know, some of the folks from ESPA can share with the Vermont Action Network some of the efforts. I mean, we do have a lobbying firm. So there's a direct conversation going on with the legislature. It's a challenge, don't get me wrong, but I guess I'm just mentioning that, you know, like Washington, you know, the efforts going on there. I think there are other efforts happening across the country. So perhaps you can tap into that, you know, some of those best practices.
Steve Strauss and I are in regular conversation, and
Right.
he's not the only one. There's a number of folks that come with you.
Sure. But I mean, you've identified all the right issues. You just have to keep on, you know, moving forward. But the key is getting to the legislature, because that's really where, you know, you're going to make some impact. So, you know, it's education, and, you know, I think once you tell your story, you'll find that, you know, they'll agree with you. So it's a matter of just keeping it moving forward. It's, you know, it's a long process.
Yes. Yes, it is. So I'm going to take this moment. Oh, I hear someone jumping in. Go ahead. No. I'm going to take this moment to say thank you to everyone for joining us. I think this was a fantastic discussion and fantastic chance to hear from some of the real leaders in the marketing area. We have been given a lot to think about, and thank you for thinking about it in this space collectively. And with that, we have a moment for last thoughts, and then I will just say goodbye.
Very nice job, Chris. Thank you for inviting me.
I appreciate that.